Hail and good morning, good afternoon or good evening depending where you are in the world or when you're watching this. My name is Runic John and this is my new channel and this is actually my first video on my new channel. As it is my new channel, I thought it might be a good idea for me to introduce myself and say a little bit about myself. So as you know, my name is Runic John. I'm an artist and I'm a writer. I'm author of the Book of Heathenry and Up and Down the Tree, Exploring the Nine Worlds of Yggdrasil. I am a heathen and I practice, teach and write about heathenry, and I practice, teach and write about heathen magic. I specifically practice Seidr, so I'm a Seidr man, and I practice Galdr, so I'm a Galdr man, and various other forms of heathen magic. And over the years, I've inspected, that's a good word, isn't it? I've had experience of many different forms of magic. I'm very passionate about heathenry, and I'm very passionate about heathen magic, and I'm very passionate about magic in itself. I ran the Shaman's Apothecary at festivals for like 10-15 years or something, and I've worked at festivals for a long time. This year is the first year since I was 16 that I haven't gone to a festival, which is pretty crazy, isn't it? So as you can imagine, I'm looking forward to next year or even later in this year when the festivals open again. I was brought up with punk rock. I live in the north of England and I love psytrance. So now you've got a basic idea of who I am. We can get to the actual reason for this video, which is to have a brief introduction to heathenry. So I'm a heathen. What is a heathen apart from being a me? A heathen, basically, in its most basic definition, is someone who follows the ancestral spiritual path of Northern Europe. Someone who follows the ancestral spiritual path of the northern tribes. When I first got into heathenry, I lived up north and I was 12. And I didn't really know, in fact, I didn't know anybody else who was into heathenry. And I had to kind of muddle my own way forward through in any way that I could. And at that time, we didn't even know the name heathenry. There was a term for this spirituality, and one of the terms we used at that time was Norse paganism, which shows that heathenry is a paganism that comes from the north. So at other times we call this tradition northern tradition, and later on it was heathenism. I really don't know how it ended up being heathenry, but I'm sure there was kind of a decision somehow in the heathen circles that we would call it heathenry, and we do. That's how I've always called it for many years. I call it heathenry. So I'm a heathen and the spiritual path is heathenry. And we use these terms as opposed to paganism or pagan or paganism because they originate in the north and from our ancestors' times, and they were used to describe our ancestors and those who followed the old ways. Bloody heathens. So it could have been a derogatory term. We can't prove or disprove that. But we have taken that term today and we use it to describe our northern spiritual path. Heathenry was originally practiced by the tribes that we know today as the Germanic tribes. These are a group of tribes that lived in northern Europe, originally in Germania, which is like the top of Europe, and eventually they would spread out, and then in the later Viking era they really spread out all over the place. These were a number of tribes that were each was its own tribe. Each was an individual tribe. They weren't like one big set of one tribe. There were many tribes, and each of these tribes were interrelated or connected through the language, through the belief system, and through the culture. So people in different places and different times had different ways of doing things, but they're all objectively related. Tribes had different names for the gods and different names for the whites. You'll have Odin or Ovin or Woden or Wotan or even Woden. Today I just call Odin. I call Odin. That's pretty good. They call me Runic. Carry on calling me it because my name. In a way, I often see, like, when I think of the gods and the different names like this in different places and at different times, you can often find that different tribes were calling on different elements, specific elements of a god's personality or of the spirit's personalities, and in a way that's why they knew them by different names. So if you're calling on a god in a battle time, they might have one name, and another time they might have a different name. So tribes that lived near a forest or lived in a forest, and tribes that lived in the mountains, and tribes that lived by the sea, or tribes that lived on the moors, would all have very different primary gods that they connected with, and different elements of the gods. So, like, obviously, someone in the sea is going to connect with gods of the sea. Someone in the mountains, the gods of the mountains that are related to that. So the connections with the gods and the whites is the word we use for spirits. The connection with the gods and the whites would be relevant to the land that they lived on, the area of that land, the things they shared that area with, and the environment and the element of that area in the other world, or the other world connections in that specific area where they lived. Whilst we know our ancestors were called heathen by other people, we don't really know what they called their spirituality themselves. And to be truthful, they probably didn't even need a name, because in those times you were born into this tradition, you were born into heathenry, and really there were nothing to contrast it with. For the longest time, all the different tribes had this was the way, and it wasn't just the way, it was life. It was life. It wasn't just something like over there prepackaged, like a religion thing over there. That we go to on Sundays, or we go to on this day, or whatever. It's like, no, it was the entirety of their lives. So they probably didn't have any specific names for it. So I just mentioned the use of the name the Northern Tradition, and that is one of the earlier names that we called heathenry. Now, it's kind of a misleading term in a way, that, because it puts over the idea of a unified tradition, of a single tradition. And in truth, heathenry has never been a single tradition. So heathenry is an umbrella term that covers many different practices, not just a single practice. Many different ways of being. You could say each individual heathen as their, and you could say, and it's true. You could say, because it's true, thank you very much, that every heathen has their own way of practicing their heathenry, and they do. Or they should do. Like, if you're copying someone else's, then that's not fucking right, is it? Just, we don't copy other people's ways. We find our own way. Heathenry is about finding your own connection, your own spiritual connection, building your own spiritual relationships, finding your own way on the path, as opposed to like being told what to do, or being like completely directed by somebody else. Heathenry really encourages the growth of self and a spirituality that is based on your experience, that evolves as you evolve, and your relationship with yourself, with the gods, with the ancestors, with the past, with the present, with the land whites, and with the other evolves. I like to call heathenry a spiritual path as opposed to a religion. For me, the term religion is too, I think it's too connected to the modern times and monotheism. It's a loaded word. So it's a word that says a pre-packed tradition. It doesn't emphasize personal experience. It's something like most of these monotheistic religions have books, so it's something that's written down and given to you, and you're told what you do, and you're told how you do it, when you're meant to do it, and what leg you stand on while you're doing it. And heathenry is not like that at all. For me, religion conjures to mind the idea of a box. It's like a religion is that it's in there, and I can port it over there. We'll build a building that's the right building for that. Identical. We'll all do the same rituals. We'll all do the same thing. This is how you do it. That priest knows how to do it, so they will tell us how to do it. If we forget how to do it and we do it on this day, we don't really need to think about it then, because we've done what we're supposed to be doing. That's a religion for me. Spirituality is very different. A spiritual path is an experiential path that you travel and that you make the choices in. And you can go as deep into it or as light into it as you want. And you can change that at any time you want. And you make the connections that you want to make. And you grow the relationships that you want to grow. And you study what you want to study. And you learn what you want to learn. And you grow through experience by putting those things into action in your life. Heathenry is more like an adventure, an exploration of a great forest. So you can walk in a little way if you want. Or you can follow that path which winds deep into the forest, into the beautiful green forest with all new things to discover and experience. And you can go as far as you want and as deep as you want. If you want guides, you can get guides to take you along. If you want to go on your own, you can go along. You make the decisions. It's up to you. When you want to sit down and have a brew and a butty or whatever and have a rest, you can decide. If you want to go into the middle of the grove and dance, you can decide. Whatever you do is right. There's no one there to tell you if it's right or wrong, because you're doing it. And if it feels right and you're doing it from the heart with a deep connection to your spirituality and your gods, with meaning and with intent, then it's right. Simple as that, really. So today a lot more people are familiar with the Norse myths from programs like Vikings and lots of mass media things, and there's been like loads of interest in Vikings recently. These myths come from two major. Well, the majority of the myths come from two major books. They're called the Eddas. So one's called the Poetic Edda. One's called the Prose Edda. And as you might guess, the Poetic Edda is written in poetic form, and the Prose Edda is written in narrative form, like a story or a collection of stories. The Poetic Edda was written by a man called Snorri Sturluson around 1220, and we don't really know exactly who wrote the Prose Edda. Both of these books are based on oral tradition. That means they are based on a tradition that in which the stories and teachings and poems were passed on by song or by word of mouth, and were not written down but were remembered. Oh my God, that's amazing. Can you imagine remembering books worth of things? These days, it's good. If you can have 2 minutes memory, you're kind of winning, aren't you? Both of the Eddas are based on a very specific time in a very specific place, and they reflect that. So they're based on Scandinavian and Icelandic belief at the end of what we call the Viking era, which is kind of the end of the unbroken heathen times. So the stories and teachings and things that come in these books are representative of that time, not of all heathenry. Though, as that is what we have, that is the foundations and roots, as well as other things like the sagas and historical literature and the amazing archaeological finds that are coming up and insights. We base our tradition on that, though the tradition probably goes back much further. Not probably, goes much further into time, probably right back to the first humans. Whilst these are invaluable sources for us to draw on and to build upon, they aren't the word of the gods. I know I've seen quite a few people arguing about them word from word, and arguing about them line from line, about the accuracy, about this, or you've got that. And they're not like that. They shouldn't be taken like that. They're historical documents or literary documents. They've never been a Bible. They weren't a Bible. They probably weren't even originally together as they are now. None of them. They've been put together. It's kind of, the join is kind of synthetic, really. Those stories would have been part of a mass corpus of stories about the gods, heroes, history, historical things, all sorts of stuff, mythological times. So really, it's important to get that in your mind, that the Eddas aren't the Bibles of heathenry. They are not the law. They are one aspect of our tradition that we can build upon. Another thing to keep in mind as well is the idea of myths, the idea of Norse myths, or whatever myths even, from any place around the world. That's a very modern thing. In the days of our ancestors, they didn't say, oh, let's go and read some myths about the gods. There weren't such a thing. They've only become that when they've been compiled in this fashion and given that name. These stories were not regarded as fictions or historical quaintness or whatever like that. They were regarded as eternal truths, as they are regarded by myself today as eternal truths, and I'm sure many other heathens. And they are the warp and weft of reality. They are the very threads that build reality, that hold reality together, and they are the framework through which we view and experience our lives and our reality as heathens. In the times of our ancestors, we'd have been born with these stories. We'd have grown up from being born for our entire life learning these stories, and we would know the gods and understand these things off by heart. We would be able to see them in every element of our lives and every element of our actions and thoughts. Today we have to make a conscious decision to relearn these stories and this new framework, or this old framework, old. We have to relearn this ancient ancestral framework, but it's something that we come to and we do deliberately, and we do with intent and will. At its heart, the thing we're trying to do is to replace the kind of modern synthetic way of seeing reality that doesn't have any meaning and that has been pushed into us from birth, with something that has meaning, something that is organic, something that is whole, something that is natural, and that is the ways of our ancestors. Heathenry is polytheistic, so we have more than one god or goddess. We have a number of them. The majority of people today follow the Aesir and Vanir. That's Northern English pronunciations there for you. In fact, everything I pronounce is Northern England. So the Aesir and Vanir, I will talk about these in another video in detail. I'm not going to go into that, but they're the gods. So there's many of them, basically. And also, I think is when we say gods, in the past, that didn't have any kind of, it wasn't male or female. So if you hear me just say gods, it means all gods and goddesses. It was gender neutral. Gender neutral, yeah. So gods means all gods and goddesses, the Aesir and the Vanir. You'll hear how Odin and his brothers Vili and Ver come across two washed up trees or branches or trunks, an ash and an elm. And from these, they make the first two humans. From the trees, they make the first two humans. First two humans, not the first two people of this tribe, or the first two people of this nation, or the first two people of this country. First two humans. All humans. So from that perspective, all human beings are one tribe, and we are brothers and sisters, and we are all the sons and daughters of Odin. Hail Odin. Hail all the sons and daughters of Odin. And kind of this is the way I approach heathenry. For me, heathenry is a beautiful, living, powerful, amazing path that exists in the now, that is relevant for modern times, that is relevant for anyone who feels, and it is open to anyone who feels the call of the gods or feels a connection with the old ways of the North. Heathenry grew in the North, but it's spread all over the world. If you think about it, in Viking times, you'd actually have people going a Viking. We're going a Viking. Get the boat. Get the boat, Egil. We're going to Viking again. You get people sailing all over the world. I mean, literally all over the world, and taking this tradition with them. Whether the people there joining the tradition makes no difference at all. I'm sure some of them did. And I'm sure some of the northern ancestors joined in their traditions as well. But it happened all over the world. And I would think heathenry has actually been practiced, even in just small areas, by people going to Viking and maybe a few other people in most countries in the world. So for me, heathenry is open to anybody. It doesn't matter what your race is, doesn't matter what your colour is, doesn't matter what your gender is, doesn't matter what your sexual preferences are, doesn't matter where you live, it doesn't matter what your education level is, and it doesn't matter where you come from or what other religions you come from to join us as heathens. It doesn't matter what car you drive, doesn't matter what your favourite band is, what your underpant colour is, or what your favourite moves at the disco are on a Saturday night. Heathenry, in my perspective and my view, is open to everyone, and everyone is welcome, and the gods and the ancestors will happily embrace all the sons and daughters of Odin if they ask to be embraced. Heathenry is the foundation of my life and has been for all my adult years and all my teen years. And I can even see when I look back when I was really young, like an infant and a junior and all that kind of thing, I could see seeds of heathenry being sown into my life and how it was growing, and those little sprouts were moving out until when I got to about 12. Then I really connected fully with the tradition. The gods, the ancestors, and the whites that I work with have always been there for me, in good times and difficult times. They've been a constant source of inspiration, of creativity, of beauty, of happiness, of strength, of courage. As Don Juan, Don Juan, that was it. Don Juan said to Carlos Castaneda in one of his books, "Follow a path with a heart." Well, I can definitely say this is a path with a heart. It is a wonderful, life-changing path and a beautiful path, and if you can see, I'm quite passionate about it. I hope that comes through, because I am. I tell thee, I am indeed. So the reason why I'm making this channel is to be able to share my knowledge and experience. I've had a lot of experience of magic and the heathen path. I've lived it and I live it. And I just think it would be nice to share it with people. I believe we've lost so much in the past that if you've dedicated your life to something like this, then it's really important for everybody who does this to share the knowledge. We can't lose any more knowledge. We lost so much way back when. You know, we need to share that knowledge and spread it around and welcome people back to their heritage, to their ancestral ways. And I think this is a way we can change the world for the better. We'll find respect for each other. We'll find understanding and compassion. We'll find courage and strength to make the right decisions. We'll find guidance. I believe, like, to get the world back in balance, everyone needs a bit of heathenry. What can I say? But then again, I'm pretty biased. I love it, me. I think that's enough for now. So if you found this interesting, I hope someone's found it interesting. For me, if one person, if what I do on this channel helps one person reconnect with their heathen ways, that'd be brilliant. I'll be really happy. If it helps a lot of people reconnect, that'd be well good. That's why I write books. That's why I run workshops. That's why I do things, because I'm proud and honoured to be part of the turning of the circle when the old ways return to the land. And one of my deepest aims in life is to help make the ways of my ancestors live again. And hopefully this channel is a really good outlet to do that. So, if you're interested in Vikings, and you watch the show and it were well good, if you're interested in learning about heathen magic, if you're interested in learning about heathenry, and if you're interested about learning about things you can't put in books, see, one of the reasons why I thought the channel would be good is, like, you can't put rune singing in books. I can put down but I can't tell you how to sing it. I can't show you rituals in action. I can't show you rune carving or rune magic in action. I can't show you Seder in action. And there's lots of things that I can't. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to put my books down. They're fantastic, and they're an amazing inroad to learn about heathenry and heathen magic. Though there are some things that you need to do in person. So I'm not running many workshops these days, and I just thought this is a really good outlet to kind of try and share knowledge, experience, and magic. So if you are interested in learning about magic, stepping out on the heathen path, living this tradition, and filling your life full of magic. Fill your life full of magic. It's well good, I tell thee. It's brilliant. Anyway, I'm going to shut up now. So I'm going to say thanks very much for joining me. And I'll be doing lots more videos to share with you. And until we meet again, may the Aesir and Vanir, the gods and goddesses of the northern tribes, watch over, bless you and guide you to great adventures, magic and joy. Till we meet again, hail Odin.